left unspoken. I'm sorry that I could not let you in. Dumbfounded world, land left unturned, wide-eyed, sickle and blue. You bring me letters on Sunday, white collar make me feel brand new. When I cannot speak, when I cannot find my way through, you bring me letters on Sunday. New moon appears, stand sane and wax gibbon and sun. I follow the line down your back to the scar that shadowed you out. You bring me letters on Sunday, white collar make me feel brand new. When I cannot speak, when I cannot find my way through, you bring me letters on Sunday. After the battle, cradle or castle, words scratched out and done. Fire in the freezing rain, the feeling after you've won. You bring me, you bring me, you bring me, you bring me letters on Sunday.
Hi, my name is Michelle Brennan, and I just want to welcome you all to The Word here on behalf of Sligo Library. The Word this term, this is our first edition of The Word for this term in January, and this is in association with the BA in Creative Writing and Literature with ATU Sligo. We're delighted tonight to have Nuala O'Connor join us as our guest for this month. Nuala is an award-winning author of Nora and SEABORNE, which has been shortlisted for the Eason Book of the Year in 2024. Nuala will be in conversation with visual artist and writer in her own self, Niamh Mac Cabe. And for music, as you just heard, we have Mags Kilcoyne. Mags is a singer-songwriter and poet based in Sligo, and we just had a beautiful song with Mags there now. We have our audience Q&A and our regular open mic, which you're all welcome to join in. And the open mic will be facilitated tonight by Vanessa O'Malley. I'm now going to officially hand you over to Niamh, and she will officially introduce you to Nuala. Okay, thank you and enjoy.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I was really delighted and excited when Michelle contacted me asking me to facilitate the conversation with Nuala. I've been fascinated by Nuala for years now. She's a very prolific writer, I'll tell you all about it, but not only has she published a tremendous amount of work, but she works wonderfully in many different forms, which I think is very unique. And let me tell you about Nuala. Award-winning novelist, poet, short story writer, flash fiction writer, the editor of Splonk online magazine, we'll talk about that later, living in Galway. She has 6 novels to her name, 7 short story collections, 4 poetry collections, and another one on the way, the 5th poetry collection, titled Menagerie, is going to be published is coming out in March via Arlen House. And her most recent novel publication is SEABORNE. This is SEABORNE here, Nuala's SEABORNE. It's a retelling of the life of Irish pirate Anne Bonny. SEABORNE was shortlisted for An Post Book Awards Novel of the Year last year, and it has just recently been longlisted for the Dublin Literary Award 2025. This is the largest literary award internationally. 100,000 quid, right, is up for grabs here. So we're all rooting for Nuala. It's the largest prize in the world for a single novel published in the English language. So well done for that, Nuala. You're very, very welcome. So, so let's just ask the typical question first of all, but I am really interested in this. When and why did you start writing?
I suppose I was a bookish child. I grew up in a house where books were valued. My parents were not educated and they wanted to make damn sure that the 7 of us were educated. So education was put high on their list of things to spend their small amount of money on, which they did. So we were sent to Irish language schools in Dublin City, and I think living between two languages, where Irish is the language of school and English is the language of home, for someone like me who kind of words were my playground, this was a great asset in my life. So I lived between the two languages. I loved Irish so much actually that I went on to study it in college. I did a BA in Irish and then I did a master's in translation using Irish and worked as a translator for a year, short-lived career as a translator, but I was more into literary translation than the commercial stuff that was available. So yeah, grew up a reader. My older sister, Nessa, 5 years older than me, really influenced my reading. So being 5 years ahead of me, she was obviously reading ahead of me, but she would hand me her books when she was finished with them. So she gave me Austen, the Brontes, Evelyn Waugh, very English diet actually of books. And later when I started writing, I started looking a lot towards America and particularly American short story writers. So English-Irish sort of fiction growing up, and then a lot of American stuff later on, probably.
Okay. So I mentioned your next publication about to come out in March, Menagerie. It's a poetry collection. And the previous poetry collection of yours that was published, called The Juno Charm, that was published in 2011. Now, you've been really busy in between, but it's interesting to me, that large gap in terms of poetry collections. How do you make the choices over what you're going to focus on next? So obviously this poetry collection you've been working on, but it has been many years since you've focused on poetry. How do you make those choices?
Yeah, and I suppose it's only a poetry collection because I'm collecting up 11 years worth of poems, you know, that kind of way. I suppose it's to do with commitment to a project and tunnels of interest. So I'm autistic and I have a very monotropic mind, which means that I go down a tunnel of interest and I stay there. So when I'm working on a novel, I'm all in. I eat, breathe, sleep, the research. I do my research and my writing at the same time. I'm not recommending that as a method of working, but it has worked for me so far. So I go down my Anne Bonny tunnel and I'm stuck down there. The only poems, flash or short stories I will write during the 2 years it takes to do this are commissions. I don't really find that my mind, with its sort of very tunnel vision-y sort of way of being, has room or headspace to let in the stuff, the other stuff. And also it's time. As an autistic person, I'm very rigid and protective of my time. I don't like handing my time out to other people. And so I have a routine. If I'm not at my desk at 9 o'clock in the morning, I go a bit gaga, so I have to be there. And then because I'm committed to the project of whatever it is I'm doing, I will just do that. So if there's time later in the day, I will do what I call the peripherals, which is editing, maybe submitting stuff, answering emails. but the morning is for this. It's for the writing. And like most people, by 3 in the afternoon, I'm completely flagging. I'm not going to write another thing. So there isn't really a hope in me writing a poem. Sometimes if I'm on holidays or something like that, I have the sort of headspace where a poem or a story idea might occur to me, and I will take the notes and all of that, or write it if it's coming quickly. But when I'm in a project, I'm in a project. So I desperately wanted to do another poetry collection during those 11 years, but I knew I would have to take a chunk of time, 4 or 5 months, to really kind of relax back into the poetry space. Read a lot of poetry, write a lot of poetry, commit to the project as such. And I knew I was too mean myself to spare the time from the novel, because I'm so sort of organised and tight about stuff that I wouldn't allow myself those 4 or 5 months. I mean, a lot of you here are writers or in the writing game, and you know that the novel is seen as the kind of the queen of the literary scene, right? That's the one your agent's going to pitch and get you money for. She can't get you money for a short story collection. She can't get you money for a poetry collection. So the other side of it is, a lot of the time I'm thinking, how can I get a book out in this time frame, earn a bit of money from it so I can write the next book? So again, there's also practical decisions in it around that. So there's all sorts of stuff you're weighing up, I suppose, in terms of what you're going to commit to. People are always saying to me, oh, why don't you write in Irish and all? And I'm like, yeah, if I had a 2-year window of time, I could get in there and do that. But I don't have the physical time, and I don't have the mental sort of capacity to be doing all the stuff at once. You know, I get very overwhelmed and discombobulated, and then I can't do anything.
It has amazed me that and twice you just said it, 2 years. It takes you 2 years to write a novel. That's incredible. A novel like for instance, SEABORNE, the amount of research you must have done, that's an incredible amount of work. But you clearly have or it seems to me you have quite a strict process. You said you start at 9 in the morning.
Yeah.
And this is something you try and do daily, and you write through till 3.
Well, no, I don't write.
Okay,
no,
okay.
No.
But
I write till about midday, and
Yeah.
then I have my lunch with my husband. He works from home as well, and then I might go back and faff around a bit. But look, I kind of don't do anything else, right?
Mm-hmm.
My youngest kid is 15. She's sort of off my hands in a lot of ways. The other 2 are living away, one here in Sligo. And so, you know, I'm also deeply introverted, very shy, not terribly sociable. I don't drink. So a lot of my time is spent at home reading, writing, or thinking about writing. I honestly have the most hermity, boring, run-of-the-mill life, and that's what I do. And also because of my brain and my anxiety, writing is my self-soother. It's my special interest. And so it does me good to be writing. See, when I don't write for a couple of weeks, I go a bit nuts. So I have to just kind of get back to it, to get myself on an even keel, to feel my mood come back to normal. So it's my sanity and it's my joy. And so why wouldn't I do it 5 days a week? Whatever amount of weeks there are in a year, 52, is it? I do take some holidays, and I take my weekends off generally, unless I'm doing a gig, a reading or an event or whatever. Because of that rigidity, I have things all sectioned off. When it's the time to do this, I do this. When it's the time to do that, I do that. And that's the way my life runs.
But I do applaud you still for achieving the likes of SEABORNE within 2 years. I think that is a tremendous feat. And I just have a little question. I'm interested in diving into SEABORNE, but I want to ask you about the short. Well, it's really a flash fiction collection, Birdie.
Yeah.
Which I have here.
That was my lockdown project.
Yeah. So this is Birdie. It's a flash fiction collection with a wonderful cover. And do you notice I have all your books here? Not all of them. Actually, not at all of them. And in the collection Birdie, you have a flash piece, a really interesting, kind of like mythic flash piece called Menagerie. Does that have any connection to the poetry collection about to come out?
Yeah, so I have a very sort of fluid relationship with Flash. um, some people are very kind of like, oh, that's a prose poem because X, Y, Z, and that's a Flash because another X, Y, Z, and I don't really care. These are small pieces of prose-like writing, and if it's in my Flash collection, I'll call it Flash, and if it's in my poetry collection, I'll call it poetry. I really, genuinely don't care very much for labels. None of the labels. They're publishing inventions, literary fiction, commercial fiction, genre fiction, crime fiction, blah, 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 blah. Really just annoys me. I find the publishing industry, A, annoying, and B, almost impenetrable in trying to understand it. The only thing you can understand, it's a commercial thing. And we all know perfectly brilliant writers with perfectly good books who have never been published. I say book manuscripts. And we know other writers who have been published and are lauded and blah, blah, blah. So Menagerie is in that collection. It's also gone into Menagerie, the poetry collection, as the title piece.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, wonderful. I didn't know that. That's great.
Yeah, so as prose poems, there's a good few prose poems. Prose poems. You could, on another day, call them microfictions. I'm not a writer who is interested in plot in anything. I don't need the books I read to be plotty. I'm not interested in plot as a writer. The only ingredient you really need for fiction is something must happen. And then your characters either save themselves or make a mess of things. And that's all that's going on generally in fiction. And so these, some people even object to vignettes. You hear vignette, the word vignette used as if it's an insult, whereas I think a vignette is a beautiful thing. It's a little sideways glimpse into something, So none of these sort of descriptors that are used negatively concern me. And I'm very happy to, in a way, plagiarize myself and take Menagerie from there and pop it into... And the publisher, Ireland House, are very flexible in that way too. They're not very, waving the finger at me or anything about that's not a poem or whatever. Very open to what you want to do, which I love.
That makes a lot of sense when you look at your body of work, that you have this kind of disinterest in labeling it, or this has to be called a prose poem. This has to be that makes sense, because you seem to be able to shift between these forms and these structures without any fanfare. So can I ask you, Nuala, to read something first?
Yeah, sure. Do you have something in mind, or will I just...
I would be delighted if you read from SEABORNE.
I'll read a little bit of SEABORNE. So basically, when I started to research Anne Bonny, I realised that most of what was written about her was made up rubbish, basically. Even the stuff that's been passed off as truth about her turns out to be faction or complete fiction. So, for instance, the names given for her parents in academic papers, in all sorts of things, are actually the invention of the writer Jan Karlova from the 1960s. So, discovering that most of Anne's backstory was invented, I felt free to invent my own, while using some of the fun fictional details I had learnt about Anne, like her cross-dressing, her sort of, what would I say, not violent temper, but her feistiness. I love a maverick woman. I love a historic maverick woman most of all, because there's huge freedom in writing about people who are dead. So this is a, what would you say, a coming-of-age story for Anne. It's a sort of a... So we know for a fact that a woman called Anne Bonny was tried for piracy in 1720 in Jamaica. What I wanted to see was, how did she get there? They said she was Irish. Was she? Who knows? It's not written down anywhere apart from in the general history of the most notable pirates, which again is very factional. They thought that Daniel Defoe might have written it, but that's been disproved. I think maybe, and a few of us who are into this kind of piratey stuff agree that it was probably written by the guy who published it. Nathaniel, can't remember his surname. Anyway, him. So, Anne's great love is the sea. She's a water baby. Her mother teaches her to swim. She lives by the sea in Kinsale in Cork, and her mother teaches her to swim, and all she wants to do is get to the sea. Her family emigrate from Ireland to the Carolinas and they move inland. Her father has a plantation, and Anne is desperate to get to the sea, so she enters a marriage to escape. And into that marriage, she brings her indentured servant, B. Okay. So they, what's the word when you run away to get married? They elope. Her and Gabriel Bonny elope to Providence Island, which was called a nest for pirates. So this is where all of there used to be legal pirates called privateers. They were basically seamen. This is where all the privateers who went rogue ended up. And it became a really notorious place. And it was quite a free place. Races intermingled. It was a great place, really. And that's where Anne and Gabriel end up. When you sail to a land south and south again, the air becomes lush and thick, like that in a laundry house on wash day. In our tavern bedroom, Bedelia complains that she cannot breathe and she claws at her throat. I rise to open the window to relieve her. For myself, the syrupy draught feels beautiful, so different from the air in Berkeley County. It is gummous and heavy, exotic as our future, and I like the way the warmth licks at my neck and forearms, even as I walk through it from casement to bed in our tavern room. I must step over Bedelia on her pallet on the floor, the room be so mean in size. Come up from there, Bee, I call. And she rises to lie on the bed with me, Gabriel being gone once more in search of a berth on a ship to earn our keep. He has roved out every day for a month, gaining little save a few hours' toil here and there. Bedelia grunts, settles, and presses her belly, large now as she nears her birthing time. She does not speak, and her silence worries me. Do you sometimes wish you had stayed at Hasty Point, Bee? I ask her. I belong with you, Anne, she says. And with Gabriel now too, I reply. She juts her lip. She says. I want Bee and Gabe to like one another so that we might all go along in harmony, but they circle about, attempting not to collide, wariness pulsing between them. I lie at the core of it. They push, pull, push me, body, heart and mind, and we all three realise it. I have enough regard in me for both, but Gabe wants to dominate me, and Bee, I know, wants only my ease and contentment. I lean up on my elbow to look full at her. You do not regret leaving all behind, Bee? You be my home, Anne, she says. Yes, I say, relieved that she wants to be by me as much as I want her here. Who will mind me if not you? Why, my husband will, Miss Bedelia, I say with mock conceit, but I tickle for a moment to my wifely status. We both laugh. Mr. Bonny all you hoped for, she asks. He be a fine-looking man, amiable enough in his way, but he stays quiet, huh? Silent. I pause and chew over Gabriel like a cat gnaws a mouse. There hangs about him an air of mute disappointment that I suspect has to do not only with his lack of success in securing work, but with my unmoneyed state. He has uttered little this past few weeks in Nassau. He nurses unspoken sentences, but seems unable to find ways to release them. I refuse to press him or try to finagle information like some nag wife. But every time I look at him, I find him regarding me with questioning eyes. I can only guess that he nurtures frustration with me, with my father. Oh, Gabriel be attentive to me still in plenty of ways. By night he roves over my body like a man starved. But his early optimism faded like mist under sun rays. Melancholy drips from him, and it leaves me both disquieted and irked. Gabriel has indeed gone very silent, I say. The man utters as little as a beetle, Bee remarks. I sigh. Well, if he can secure himself a good position at sea, at least that be a husbandly thing to do. I pet Bedelia's arm. When he gets in advance, we can rent that set of rooms we speak of, and you will have your own bedroom, Bedelia. Maybe when we have more money and a little privacy, Gabriel will return to himself, find some cheer. He surely will, Anne, she says, her voice a drowse, and she crooks into my arm and falls asleep.
Beautiful. Beautiful. It's so lovely to hear you read it. The language in SEABORNE, for want of a better way to put it, is very piratey. But it's, you know, the words and the turn of phrase that that Anne Bonny has is wonderful. Is that something that you research, or is that your own voice that I don't mean your own personal voice, but did you invent that voice for Anne?
Yeah, so I read a lot of novels of the enslaved and sailors' diaries and books about enslaved people, nonfiction by the enslaved, like Mary Prince's book and all of the famous ones. And because because Anne is from Cork, then goes to the Carolinas, and then ends up with really hanging around with the servants on the plantation and imitating their voices, that she had to have this amalgam of a kind of an Irishy, American-y, Caribbean voice. And so that's what I tried to give her. We all know the sailor, the pirate voice, the R, and I be this and I be that. So I kind of use that a little bit with the B instead of am and R. So it's fun to hear the voice and then try and sustain it and go with it for the length of the thing, you know, and that's part of the enjoyment of writing for me. Yeah.
Sustaining it, especially because it's really consistent throughout the book, and it is a unique voice. It's not, you know, something I've heard before. It's not the conventional piratey voice, or, you know, that kind of stereotype thing. So I was really enchanted by it, and also wondering about your choice, because you made the same choice in Nora, your novel on Nora Barnacle, the first person perspective. So is that your kind of default, or is that something that you think about, you know, whether maybe a third person, like how do you make that decision, the perspective?
Yeah, I'd say it's kind of default. I love the first person voice and the second person voice. My first novel was written entirely in the second person, and like the voice is really important. You know, once you can hear it and it's in your ear, it's like you're off the starting blocks, you know what I mean? And then sustaining it is not actually that difficult because you can hear the voice. So Galway obviously features large in Nora. Nora was from Galway City, so I mined the voices of my Galway friends, their phrasings, and I also read Nora's letters that are extant. There are very few. And if any of you are familiar with Molly Bloom's soliloquy, I sort of based it on that. I didn't use Molly's words because I didn't want to plagiarize Joyce, but I wanted her to sound that, you know, Molly's 8 sentences, this great run-on, unpunctuated sort of stream of consciousness. She hops from one subject to another, which is a very female way, I think, of communicating anyway. So Nora was kind of that. Again, I was walking down the town in Ballinasloe where I live, and I suddenly sort of heard her voice, and I actually stopped and wrote it down on my phone because I heard a sentence and I thought, right, that's it. And I was able then to get going, you know. So it's kind of like that. It sounds a bit flaky, airy-fairy, but it is the business of almost like a tune or a song in your ear that you know the beat and the rhythm of, and then it's kind of easy. Like when I did the second person voice for my novel You, a lot of reviewers would comment on this thing about sustain, how do you sustain that? And oh, it works and whatever, wow, it works, because what a weird thing to do. Like, I mean, Italo Calvino had done it, and Jay McInerney, Bright Lights Big City, was all in the second person as well. But again, once you're in it, it's grand. You're just in it. It's like slipping on a garment. As regards the third person point of view, I find it extremely difficult. I wrote my novel Becoming Belle about the music hall dancer Belle Bilton in the third person as an experiment, and I found it difficult. And I kind of only did it because I wanted her husband to have a voice as well. And then in the end, my editors cut most of his. So there was this sort of weird, for me, a sort of an imbalance. I would have rather to write it in the first person because that's what's comfortable for me. I like that being the sort of, what's the trumpet, the what do you call that thing, the megaphone for the character.
Well, it works, and I'm not surprised that that is your default when you talk about your process, and your process is really evident also in the workings. What I mean is the way you immerse yourself in the subject matter, and obviously you do loads of research, and then you add your own, you know, dramatizations of certain aspects of, well, let's say Anne Bonny. But if you do immerse yourself so much in that character that you're creating, but also the historical, real Anne Bonny, then it's inevitable, isn't it, in a way that you become Anne Bonny for those 2 years or a year and a half that you are actually drafting the work, and that do you find that you start talking to yourself I don't mean like your neighbours, but like there's an inward voice then that becomes Anne Bonny for those, because you're so immersed in your
Totally, like, you know, I come to the cup of tea or the lunch with my husband or with my kids, and if I'm writing about Emily Dickinson, I'm talking about Emily Dickinson. If I'm writing about Nora and Jim, that's who I'm talking about. So they tend to be sort of part of my life. Like when my daughter certainly was younger, she used to talk about Emily Dickinson as if we knew her. You know, and we did bring her to Emily's house on one of my trips because I was doing a reading or something there, and you know, it was like, oh yeah, we're going to Emily's house, as if she was like a distant cousin or something. So there is that thing of, like, it's funny, you probably know how protective Joyce scholars are of Joyce, for example. So there was like a moment of terror about taking on Joyce, and then you get over it and just get into doing the project. But you get like that yourself about these people then. You get weirdly protective and kind of snooty about the details and what have you. But it's almost like friendship. So by the time I had written Nora, by the time I had written Miss Emily, I came at these characters with love. It's always an act of love for me to write about these women. By the end, I'm even more in love, and not just in love, but full of respect and empathy, because all of these are courageous women. They're all women who push against societal norms, push against the patriarchy, and live the lives they feel they want to live. And none of them are doing conventional things. Nora goes away unmarried, young Catholic woman goes away unmarried with a man to Europe and lives in a pretend marriage for a long time, has children and everything, like really makes her bed and lies in it. Belle Bilton had a child out of wedlock in 1889, like unheard of, and kept the child a lot, eventually did foster it out. Very sad story. Emily Dickinson gave up going to church, like a bizarre move in 1866 for a well-to-do, educated man's daughter. Retreated completely from the world in 1866 and said, you know what, I'm just going up to my bedroom to write, and I'll see you, you know, I'm going to wear what is essentially a servant's dress. I'm doing away with corsets. I'm going to bake cakes and bread, and I'm going to write. And that's what she did, like a very unusual move. And when I look at their courage and their individuality, it's their bravery that I really admire, because we were talking ourselves earlier privately about decisions we would have made when we were both younger and how we were both a bit stepping outside the norm. So maverick women in our own right. And so that's probably why I'm attracted to them. I'm a bit of a woman myself, but I'm always also trying to be a good girl. So I have this sort of very large pull between good Nuala and bad Nuala.
Bad Nuala. I want to hear about bad Nuala. But it's amazing to me, just back to Anne Bonny, but it probably applies to all of your characters. Not your characters, the historical women that you're writing about. That Anne Bonny, there were so many possibilities where you could have romanticized it, sentimentalized it, and gave Anne all these attributes. But she's a harsh woman. You know, you paint her as and I'm sure that this is based on your research, but she's a harsh woman. She's not. She's sharp, and she's self-indulgent, and so she's real, and I love that you respect that about her. About I suppose about presenting. Well, I know that you dramatize
Yeah.
it, and we'll talk about that in a minute, because I'm going to ask you about that process, how you make those decisions. But I'd like to just applaud you that you don't fall into the trap of sentimentalizing any of these women or any of these characters.
I think that can be hard though, because sometimes your agent or your editor might like you to make them a little bit more palatable. And, there's this trope of the likable character, which also gets my goat really hard, because I don't think any of us are hugely 100% likable all the time, let's face it, and neither are the characters. And why would I go through a book where I'm just not interested in Pollyanna type carry on myself? I want depth and emotion and real juice in the characters I read, and I want them in the characters I write. A friend said to me after reading SEABORNE, I hated her, I hated her, I hated her. That was the way she said it. 3 hates, quite strong. And I said, why? And she said she just kept making bad decisions. And I was like, oh, bless, because I'm older than this friend, probably by about 20 years. And it's like, that's life. It's about bad decision after mad decision after good decision after bad decision. And that's the way we live our lives. None of us are setting out to be reckless or mad on purpose, but sometimes life ends up that way, either with or without our help. And I think giving these female characters their time in the sun, and to show that you can kind of get on and have an interesting life despite not conforming to all the societal norms that women are supposed to conform to. Anne Enright wrote a very good piece. I think it was in the New York, it's not the New Yorker, what's the other one? The New York Review of Books, maybe, about likability in characters. And what she said was, and I love this, that when a male character is unlikable, it is the story. And when a woman character is unlikable, there's something a bit shameful and not nice about it. And it's commented upon, oh, she wasn't very nice. It's like, but who is very nice? Who is very nice? Are they interesting, or are they too vanilla for fiction? Like, I just think we need to shut up about likability in fiction. It's, there's this other thing that I hear, so-called book club books, right? And I think there is an effort from some, and I'm not going to say my publishers, I'm going to say some publishers, to sort of shoehorn women's books written by women, into this fictional book club book that's going to appeal to everyone in the group. No book should appeal to everybody in the group, because let's give people credit for A, their intelligence, and B, their personal taste, and that a good book club meeting is where it's nearly like, I hated that book, or I love that book, and here's why, so I think we cling to this idea of likable characters in novels at our peril.
Absolutely. And were you asked, and you didn't do it, but were you asked to sweeten up Anne Bonny a little bit? Are you allowed to say? I take that as a yes.
Okay. Let's just say I had several editors for this book. Several people did edits on this book, right? And there was different feedback from different people. My final editor was Sean Farrell, who is some kind of genius. He did an absolutely brilliant, thorough, intelligent edit on the book, and he helped me enormously. He never asked me to make her sweeter, Yeah, some of this stuff is a little hard to talk about because I'm still with the publishers. I'm
No, I'm sorry.
I just want to say I love my publishers.
Yes.
But it's an industry and they want to sell books. And I don't know. What sells books? Is it word of mouth? Is it an expensive ad campaign? Who knows? I don't think any of us know, and I don't think publishers know either.
And can I say, I'm going to ask you to do another reading, if you don't mind, now. But first, you also don't shy away from Anne Bonny's sexuality. I love this. It's like you. I'm not sure how to describe it, but it's not pretty, and it's not pretty. It is real sensual intimacy. And was that difficult to write? Was that something that you had to draft a few times, or does that come naturally?
No, I've never shied away from the open bedroom door. I think a lot of writers close the bedroom door. I actually reread Graham Greene's The End of the Affair recently because I have written a novel about such things, a new novel, and I was amazed. I sort of thought I remembered that novel being quite full on, but maybe I was very young when I read it. It's really coy. He closes the door, and I have never done that. Like, I've written about Nora and Joyce, so you can imagine that's full of bedroom shenanigans. But I've started to become kind of self-conscious about it lately because people keep talking to me about it, and I don't know, I've got this weird sudden self-consciousness about it, and I started to think maybe I shouldn't be so upfront and frank.
Oh no, don't stop. No, it's wonderful. But I mean, I'm remarking on it because it's unusual. I think, as in, and I don't know why, and I wish it wasn't.
That's what I've just realised,
Yeah.
that it's unusual, because people seem to point it out all the time in reviews and stuff. Oh, this is very, woohoo. How's your father?
Yeah,
Like, and in the novel, it's no secret she was allegedly bisexual, and so she has relationships with men and relationships with women in the novel. And I don't know, when I'm writing, I just write the thing because I'm there writing it. I don't see the need. But maybe that's just me being a little naive.
Don't change. No. Don't change. I think
I'm having thoughts about it at the moment, and I don't know what the thoughts are. I haven't formed what it is. I don't know. I feel much freer in my 50s as a person. Much freer, much happier, much don't give a shit about much anymore. And then suddenly I'm finding all this other self-consciousness about my writing creeping in, and I'm not sure sometimes if it's because of feedback from people and I'm taking it too much in, and I don't know, it's just there's some strange little processes going on in my head. I'm not sure what it's all about. Maybe it's because I've had a little break from, that I'm going into a poetry space again, which is very revealing of the self. Very, very, and I remember I used to nearly have panic attacks when I'd have a poetry book coming out because they're so personal. I write a lot about the body and about, things like secondary infertility and childbirth and all that. And now, obviously, I'm menopausal, so there's a little bit of that in it. And, it's like, it's much more revealing to write nonfiction and poetry. But then I'm not coy about the fact that most of my characters are versions of me as well. There is kind of.
Well, I want to delve into that whole thing about the bridge between these different forms that you use, and is there a different approach that you have, a different process? But would you read a little bit more for us first?
Yes, will I read SEABORNE or a bit of Nora?
Maybe a bit of Nora, even though.
Throw us that.
Do you have
there.
Nora?
No, I don't. I'll grab this.
Oh yeah, there. Here it is too.
I'll just read the shortest chapter in Nora because I think it's my favourite one. Joyce used to call Nora his little Ireland, Irlandina. Wherever you are is Ireland to me, he said, is Éire to me. He wrote that in a notebook. So they met on they had their first date on the 16th of June 1904, and this chapter is set a month later, mid-July 1904. Nora's working as a maid of all work, chambermaid, bar girl in Finn's Hotel there at the end of Nassau Street in Dublin. And she has fallen hook, line and sinker for James Joyce. And he's a little bit more reserved. He's mad about her, but he's planning to leave Ireland, and he's not really sure how it's going to work out with her if he's going away. In the end, he asks her, will you come with me? But this is, obviously it's James Joyce. He was very poetic in his letters to her, etc. So this is just a little chapter in Nora's voice. The chapter's called Ireland. Finn's Hotel, Dublin, July the 16th, 1904. To Jim, I am Ireland. I'm island-shaped, he says, large as the land itself, small as the Muglins, a woman on her back, splayed and hungry, waiting for her lover. I'm limestone and grass, heather and granite. I'm rising paps and cleft of valley. I'm the raindrops that soak and the sea that rims the coast. Jim says I am Jim says I am harp and shamrock, tribe and queen. I am high cross and crowned heart held between two hands. I'm turf, he says, and bog cotton. I am the sun pulling the moon on a rope to smile over the Mamturk mountains. Jim styles me his sleepy-eyed Nora, his squirrel girl from the pages of Ibsen. I am pirate queen and cattle raider. I'm his blessed little blackguard. I am, he says, his auburn marauder. I'm his honourable barnacle goose. Nora, Jim says, you are syllable, word, sentence, phrase, paragraph and page. You're fat vowels and shushing sibilants. Nora, Jim says, you are story. So that's that.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And Nuala, I have a whole host of other questions to ask you, but I'm aware of the time.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to open up to the audience if there's any questions for Nuala.
I'll just say while you're plucking up your courage that James Joyce mined Nora's life before she met him for her stories. And that's what that chapter is about, that she is everything to him physically and mentally, but she's also a well of stories. And he was delighted with that and used a lot of her stories. Famously, Greta in the Dead is based on Nora. You know, various characters based on Nora. Molly Bloom, in a way, is an amalgam of Nora and other people.
So there's a mic roaming around there. So if you want to ask a question, just put your hand up and we'll get a mic to you.
Yep.
And I have a mentor now who says, I'll write it in another person, why don't you? See, that might work. What does put you off of the third person? So I can use that as an argument against it.
It's that distance, I suppose, that the third person causes. She did that, she said that, she whatever. Some people find that very useful because you can get inside the heads of other characters. But for me, I love the closeness of the first and second person. The way it's sort of a voice in your ear. It's a very confidential, come here till I tell you type of way of telling a story. Here's me and I'm giving me to you and I want to tell you about these things that have happened to me. And it's very, some people call it narrow, you know, they call it sort of one-sided, but I don't see that. I don't see that it's narrow. I think it's very revealing if one person is telling you all of this confidential information. And also sometimes you can see where they're wrong because of their interactions with other people or how their thoughts contradict what they say. I think it's full of interest and meatiness and juice. I think it's great. I definitely favour it. For ages I was writing a lot in the second person. Stories, flash, a whole novel, as I said. And then I thought, oh God, I'm a bit of a one-trick pony here. I better do something else. And so I would write a story in the third person just to sort of exercise myself. And then I would go back to the first or the second person because it's that flow. Again, it's like hearing the thing. And if it comes to you in the first person, it can feel very right to me anyway. But I agree with your mentor, that sometimes a story needs not to be in the third person, it needs to be in the first person for that intimacy. And maybe sometimes it doesn't, I don't know. It's story dependent, isn't it? Yeah. There's a hand up down the back.
How did you go about writing the character of Lucia?
I did a lot of research and thought a lot about Lucia's diagnosis, which was hebephrenic schizophrenic, read up a lot on it to see what that meant, characterized by impulsive behavior, truancy, voyeurism, all sorts of different things, strange antics that she got up to, and how she was at a minimum of 20 different doctors. She had saltwater injections. She had every kind of thing. She went to Jung for therapy. Who knows nowadays what her diagnosis might be? Personally, because I am autistic and have an understanding of neurodivergence, I would think that Joyce perhaps was autistic and Lucia was also autistic, maybe with ADHD as well, which is what I have. So I have this competing high excitement side with this other very disciplined side, which Joyce had. He wrote no matter where he was. Lucia was very artistic, very impulsive, like would have these crazy fancies for men. She fell for Sam Beckett and it all went heads up, feet up, whatever you'd say. So I see that there is a possible, and I thought I had come up with this by myself. I discovered afterwards other people have theories of Joyce and autism. So perhaps Lucia was autistic. What happened to her was very, very sad, to be institutionalized for most of your life, away from your family, being minded by the saint that was Harriet Weaver, etc., etc. To write her, I didn't find it difficult, but sort of painful, because it was such a sad and abrupt sort of, like the first person to commit her to an asylum was her brother. But of course, Nora, the mother, gets the blame, because that's what people do, they blame the mother. Lucia was violent, and her violence was often directed at Nora. But it was also directed at Giorgio and Jim. So it was difficult. It was a very difficult situation. Like, to have a child who was so reactive, difficult, violent, etc. must have been an extremely difficult thing for Nora to deal with, while Jim was either A, writing, or B, off drinking with his friends. So she had Lucia's care. And yeah, it was sad. It's funny, the book is like two halves. There's all this lovely light of Italy and Trieste and Rome and all, and then they go to Paris, fame, and then their life just goes vump. It just goes on this terrible downward slope where they get the fame and the riches, but their personal lives go crazy because they've brought these two late teenage children to Bohemian Paris. Nora and Jim at this stage are very square, very, sort of Victorian almost in the way they carry on, and Giorgio and Lucia are put into this pit of expat American looshness, etc., etc. Like, Nora and Jim did not like bohemian life. They were quite tight-lipped about it, quite Catholic about it, whereas Lucia and Giorgio were like, here we go, we're in Paris in the 20s, what more could we want? And they went a bit nuts, the pair of them.
So we've actually run out of time. I'm sure there's probably other questions, but unfortunately, unless it's a really short question, we have run out of time. Okay, it's a really short question here.
You're not the first person who might be a bit great young adult, old child, but wonder.
Oh, yes.
Every chapter is first person of different.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, I would love to do that, like linked stories, like Barbara Kingsolver's Poisonwood Bible, where the four women have voices and the man never gets a voice, and the whole book is about the man. It's very interesting. Yeah, it would be a fabulous thing to do. I love linked story collections that are kind of novelistic, very interesting way to write a book. Definitely. You have to make sure that you coach your reader very well in a situation like that, so that they realize the voice is changing. This is another thing, like, you want readers to read chapter titles, but sometimes they don't.
So, Nuala, thank you so much
Thank you,
for
Niamh.
sharing all of that with us. And it was an honour to talk with you.
Great.
And thank you for coming to Sligo. So I think we'll round of applause for Nuala.
Thank you.
So I'd like to welcome back Mags Kilcoyne, and she's going to sing us out.
Stone cold, find yourself at the edge of the unknown. Hear me call her on a part you cannot see. It's a thing that is sacred, a fling that is holy. Praise to the half-light, to the creature that's lowly. Strength in the breaking, find love in the making. Freedom is with you, a beautiful fable. Beautiful fable. Find love when you're able. Remember, there's fear with the faithful. Hinder hollow, carve me out a path I can follow. See me naked here in a world you cannot see. No, you can't break me. No, you can't stone me. I am the lion, although you might loathe me. Heart is still beating, while thoughts are still fleeting. Here in a screening,
O'Malley. Thanks.
Good evening. Thank you for a lovely evening so far. First up, we'll start with Jasmine Fleming. So I'm going to be reading a poem called Doctor's Office. Paper sheet rips beneath my shuffling. Screams of life and death echo outside. Some screams followed by laughter, others followed by silence. I'm silent. As I wait for my future, exposed and open, they take secrets and my dignity. They take blood and samples, piercing the skin, drawing blood. It spreads and dries in the cotton like a Rorschach painting. I make no sound, squirming and convulsing, contorting my body, trying to dull the sharpness in my pelvis. Organs that give life are stripping mine away. Do I sacrifice my future or another's chance at one? The doctor and his male entourage have no answers as the cysts bury into every aspect of the living, and I have nothing else to give. I remain defective and untreatable. Thank you.
Thank you, Jasmine. Next up, we have Owen Sproul.
Hello, this poem is based on one of the 7 deadly sins, this time gluttony. I wolf down on a snack, then another. It helps to subdue the emotions. I love to indulge, to eat away the boredom, like a pig that consumes all, ignorant to the slaughter. Chomp, 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 munch, 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 the background music of my life. A bar won't hurt, I say. The quickest and smallest pleasures are the ones that pay the highest price. My stomach is a bottomless pit, never satisfied, always looking for the next bite. I wipe my face knowing it only brings temporary satisfaction, but as a slob, I'm doomed to do it all over again. I consume more than food, entertainment and media to help numb the pain of life, fictional worlds to escape to, hours lost on the phone, just to scroll and scroll, looking for that little bit of dopamine to digest. I find it difficult to enjoy my own company without picking up food, a controller, or a phone. I am being swallowed up by Beelzebub, his orange fangs devouring me. I feed into the problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Owen. And finally, I'll finish with a poem called What is in a Name? The hook of a nose that bends itself to dark water below the pier. A stillness that jolts a memory within this place that once was mine. But I have never lived here really, only in my dreams or day thinking. This place that nestles into the valley, this place that watches the tide fill up the sides of the pier twice a day and holds its breath, when sometimes the waves surface, pulling a blanket of midnight blue gently over foreign land to sleep. This place that whizzes past in blurred names that have descended and gave name to me, who stands on a grey slab in a Connemara village and wonders what would it be like to live as undisturbed as they. Thank you.
So that's it, the end of the evening. I just want to thank Nuala and Niamh for such an incredible conversation this evening. Nuala, you were so generous with your thoughts and your readings, and it was just lovely to hear you. I heard Nuala at a conference in 2024, and I knew she'd be perfect for the word. So I'm so glad that she agreed to join us this evening, because I knew you'd all enjoy her too. She was just amazing to hear. I also want to thank Mags for providing some fantastic music for us this evening. It's just so beautiful and so emotional, and if you've read Nuala's work, I think it kind of goes hand in hand with it. It's perfect. And I just want to thank the open mic guests as well for taking the chance and having a go up here as well, and for Vanessa for facilitating it. Before I hand you back to Mags for the final song, I just want to let you know of a few events coming up. The word is scheduled now for the next few months. So we have Maura Gilligan coming up in February, Bridget Hurricane in March, and Elaine Garvey in April. So if you want to be notified of those events, you can leave your name and contact details at the desk, because we've a full, as well as the word, we've a full schedule of various events coming up, and classes and workshops. So if you want to hear of more details, you can just leave your contact details at the desk. And also, we also have a Kirkle Chorus that meets regularly as well on a Friday, every second Friday, if you want to join that too. And all these events and workshops are available to our Sligo Library members. So if you're not yet a member, you can go to Sligo Library and join up there, or you can join up at the desk as well. So I think that's it for the word tonight, and thank you for joining us, and you've been great. Thank you for the audience Q&A as well, that was really great too. And I am going to hand you back to Mags now, and so Guramaga agus Lán.
Starry, starry night, stay with eyes that know the darkness in your soul. Shadows on the hill sketch the trees and the daffodils, chase the breeze and the winter chills in color on the snowy linen land. Now I understand what you tried to say to me, how you suffered for your sanity, and how you tried to set them free. They did not listen, they did not know how. Perhaps they'll listen now. Starry, starry night, flaming flowers that brightly blaze, swirling clouds of a violet haze, reflect in Vincent's eyes of china blue, colors changing hue, morning fields of amber grain, weathered faces lined in pain are soothed beneath the artist's loving hand. Now I understand what you tried to say to me, how you suffered for your sanity, and how you tried to set them free. They did not listen, they did not know how. Perhaps they'll listen now, for they could not love you, but still your word was true. And on that starry, starry night, and when the world was left inside, you took your life as lovers often do. I could have told you, Vincent, that this world was never made for one as beautiful